Hi everyone, this is David T from Field Sports Scotland, and I am coming to you with another episode of FSS Chat Back. This week's episode, I have been a little bit late. Unfortunately, that's because I've been filming all week and getting on top of my deer management stuff all week, so I have pretty much been left thin on the ground for time to do these sort of things. I had hoped to have Toby with me from McLeod's to talk about the video that we did last week, but he has been busy too, so we are pretty much swamped, and I can imagine the reason for it is because a lot of people are still preparing for the rut when it comes to stocking and buying equipment and stuff like that. So hopefully, fingers are crossed, he's making lots of money and he is going to provide us new products in the future to test and get on with. This week, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about, first of all, what have I been up to? Deer management, been doing a lot of deer management. I think I've taken about 25 deer this week, which has been quite good. I have been all over the place, but our biggest problem this week has been fog. Fog has hampered a lot of work. So on the estate stuff, where I do 35 and a half hours of deer management, I pretty much 2 or 3 nights have been spoiled just because of fog. I've got some short videos and I might put it up on YouTube. I'll make up a video where I was looking in at a Sika stag, hadn't got a backstop or anything from the high seat or the high stand, whatever you want to call it. And the fog just literally rushed in at me. And within about 2 or 3 minutes, I went from being able to see a Sika stag to seeing absolutely nothing. And I mean like less than 50 yards visibility, which is shocking. Anyway, that's what happens at this time of year because it gets cold at night. We dropped down to around about 3 degrees last night, but we are still getting up to late teens, early 20s during the day. So in Fahrenheit side of things, we're still getting up to around about 60 degrees during the day, and we're dropping way below that at night. I can't remember the conversion for 2 degrees. I think it's around about 20 or something, 20 Fahrenheit. I'll have to Google it. I don't really care because I don't really work my measurements like that anyway. Anywho, so what else I've been up to? Done some pest control. I am filming a backup video for the 17 HMR to go along with the 22LR video that I did a couple of weeks ago. I have been fielding lots of questions in regards to a number of things, and I'm going to address some of those today. The DNT Optics app is still confusing a few people, so I've been working with folk in regards to that. I'm organising a big shooting trip this weekend coming. I've got a couple of lads coming up from Wales, and they are going to help me out with some of the culling and for a couple of days and see how we get on and maybe do a bit of pest control while we're out. So looking forward to that. So it's going to be a busy weekend. Might get a good podcast out of that for next week because I will make sure that they are going to sit on the chairs across from me and actually talk about some countryside issues, what they've been up to and things like that. And we'll get to meet them. So first thing I've been fielding questions about is the new Nature Scot incentive. Now, I've got to admit, a lot of this stuff is on the Nature Scot website, and I don't fully understand it myself. You basically apply for the funding. So I'll read out what's on the website and I'll try and analyse what is on the website from what I'm used to when dealing with Nature Scot. So for you that don't know, the Central Nature Scot has started 2 initiatives. It started on the 15th of August, so it started around about a month ago. What's the date today? Yeah, around about a month ago. And basically, South Loch Ness, which covers really from Inverness to Fort Augustus on the south banks of Loch Ness and some of the Monolith Mountains, that they are doing an incentive in regards to Sika culling. So the government pay, or Nature Scot will pay per deer that is shot. I manage a property on the bottom of that. I have no idea how that's going to work for us. So it's I've had a lot of questions from the syndicate members on that property, and they're asking, well, do we get paid for that? Well, I don't know what's happening with that. At the moment, we have the jury's still out in regards to that. It could be the management company, it could be the owner, it could be the individual stalker. I have no idea. So there is that, and then there's another one for red hounds down in the Central Belt. Again, I'm hearing it's around about £70 a deer. So genuinely, if you're within those areas, stalking at the moment is not going to be worth much commercially. So it's going to be, the guys are good. Basically, they're going to go out and cull themselves, and it'll make more money that way than what it would be to take the odd guest out. So we could talk about that in a little bit. So Nature Scott on the 15th of August released two incentives, and here it is. In recognition that the majority of Scotland's deer cull is carried out by private landowners and individuals at their own expense, applications have now opened for two incentive schemes that aim to support this essential management in specific areas of the Central Belt and Highlands. The pilots will be qualified, and eligible deer stalkers receive a payment for additional deer culled over and above the level currently controlled in the area. So if you're on a property and your average deer a year is, say, 40 deer, and you shoot 40 deer this year, you are not going to get the incentive for that 40 deer. The incentive comes in, and the extra payment will come in for every deer you shoot after 40. So if your average deer shot a year on a property is 40 deer, and then you shoot 50, you're only going to get the incentive for 10 deer. It's not for every deer you've culled, it's for the deer you've culled over and above your normal cull target. So some of the estates on, say, South Loch Ness will probably shoot 15 stags and 10 hinds, right? They might not shoot any sika whatsoever, but we'll go down to that in a minute. They shot 15 stags and 10 hinds, that's 25 deer. If the incentive is to make them shoot another 25 deer over the top of that, and that's where you would get the extra money. So be clear, and I'll say it again, this is not for your normal amount of deer. If you shoot 30 deer a year on your property, you put in your cull figures on in January or March or April with your cull figures and say that you've shot 34 deer, whatever, you're not going to get any extra payment. If you normally shoot 34 deer a year, and then you go to, it comes to April and May, and you put your incentive in, and you tell them that you've shot 50 deer that year, then you'll get the incentive for that extra 16 deer. It could work out to be a lot of money. It could be nothing, right? So that is, hopefully I made that part clear. Deer populations have increased in number and spread in the range over the last 50 years, yet we know. While they are an important part of Scotland's biodiversity in high numbers, their trampling and browsing has a negative impact on habitats, particularly woodlands. Yeah, if you work in woodlands, you know deer cause a lot of problems. It is estimated that the increase of the national cull of 25% or 50,000 deer each year across all species will be needed over several years to achieve the ambitious but necessary targets in the Scottish biodiversity strategy to halt biodiversity loss by 2030 and restore nature across Scotland by 2045. Well, 2045 for me is a long, long way away, but I'll try my best at the moment. Deer can also cause damage to commercial forestry and agricultural crops and create an increased risk of road traffic collisions. So this is a reasoning for it. One pilot covers 959 square kilometres to the north of Glasgow and west of Stirling, where the focus will be on lowland and urban roe deer management, as well as expanding red deer populations. So the incentives will be additional roe and red, by the looks of things. The second will cover 527 square kilometres on the southeastern side of Loch Ness in the Highlands, where the focus will be on incentivising control of invasive, non-native Sika deer in important native woodlands, as well as commercial forestry. So there's always been a huge problem down that side in regards to Sika. Sika haven't been controlled by the estates in any kind of numbers for many years. The Forestry Commission, now Forestry Land Scotland, have really, really struggled. I know the area well because I stayed there for over 15 years, and it's the only place in the country where I actually see herds of Sika. I mean herds of 30 to 40, not just herds of 1 or 5 or 6. We're talking, in some parts you could see 30 to 40 deer in one field. So it really is a huge issue on that south side of the loch. But yeah, so the incentive is going to be mainly on Sika deer. I can see if this filters onto red, the estates might still forget about the Sika because they're a little bit harder to control. They have never really got to grips. None of the controllers, Forestry Land Scotland controllers, contractors, gamekeepers, whatever, they've never really got on top of the Sika numbers because there's only so few that are actually shooting any kind of large numbers. But I'll tell you, one of the largest populations of the gamekeeping community is on that south side of the loch. So it's interesting. It really is interesting. So other than Donside and Deeside, there's probably more keepers on that on Strathnairn and Stratherick than what there is in many of the other glen systems in the Highlands. Right. So where are we? Growing numbers of deer in the lowlands and the spread of Sika were both identified as key priorities in the Independent Deer Working Group's 2020 report. Meanwhile, the Cairngorms National Park Authority will be running a third scheme to incentivise the reduction in red deer hind numbers in the national park. So that's a completely different incentive. That's been going on for a little while. The lessons learned will inform future schemes to support deer management in Scotland. Agriculture Minister Jim Farley said, "We know that Scotland is facing a nature loss crisis. Unsustainable deer numbers are exacerbating the problem as large populations continue to damage our plant life. Landowners have a specific role in helping us meet this challenge. These schemes will encourage responsible and sustainable wildlife practices that align with our goals for both the climate and our natural environment." Donald Fraser, Nature Scots Head of Wildlife Management, said, "Globally and in Scotland, nature is in decline and we face a climate emergency. Greater urgency is required to meet the challenges of these twin crises, and Scotland has ambitious targets to do so." Now, comments like that is what confuses people, because in one sense you're saying that nature is in decline, but in the other sense you're saying that the deer numbers are so high that we need to cull them. Now, to a lot of people, the deer are nature. Well, the problem is deer do not have a specific apex predator. Yes, we know that white-tailed eagles sometimes take deer. Foxes will take young roe deer, that sort of stuff. Wildcats will take roe deer kids. And as I said, other eagles, golden eagles and whatever. But they're on a decline, right? As well. So there is no real predator for mainly red deer. So the populations are just going to grow and increase over the years. And then the quality of the deer, as those numbers increase, become less. Now, I've got my own theories on ways of deer reduction, but I'll keep them to myself at the moment. Sustainable deer management is a vital part of this. We know, however, that 80% of deer management is carried out by the private sector at a net cost to deer managers. These innovative pilot schemes will give extra support to those working hard on the ground to tackle high deer numbers in certain areas. So basically, guys who are contractors are going to It's given them an extra incentive. Many contractors that work for Forestry and Land Scotland are getting £90 to £100 a deer already. So say they shoot 150 deer this year, and last year they only shot 100. That's 50 deer that are going to be part of this incentive. And that's 50. And if I hear that's an extra £70 on top of the £90 per deer, that's a lot of money for a contractor. This will help bring the number of deer in balance with the rest of nature so that our woodlands, forests, peatlands and other habitats can recover and thrive. I'm not going to argue with that. Deer numbers do need to come down. Deer management and the jobs and skills associated with it can also bring significant benefits for the rural economy, and that's why these pilots will also investigate future training support as well as exploring the barriers and opportunities to increasing the supply of venison to local communities. Well, the one way they need to do that is to reduce the venison dealer's licence and control some of what is going on when it comes to the the game dealers. The money that is coming from carcass prices is still very low, and that's another topic for another day, I think. I reckon that trained hunters like myself, those with DSC2s, large game handling, things like that, should be able to sell quite openly their whatever they shoot to the local community, as long as the point of sale is them. I don't think they should be allowed to sell to, say, a butcher. Well, they might be, direct to butchers, direct to hotels, direct to the local community. But there's an awful lot of venison going to waste, and it's not great. More information is available on the Deer Management Incentive Scheme Pilots webpage. Let's see what's on that. Participants must have, right, so for the two pilots, right, these are the requirements. Participants must have the legal right to take killed deer on specified to a minimum of deer certificate level 1 or equivalent. So that is basically saying to even think about getting these incentives. And I know many gamekeepers don't have their DSC 1, right? Many stockers on estates don't have their DSC 1. They must have their DSC 1. I've got my DSC 2, which is good, but DSC 1 is a minimum requirement. To ensure that participants must use an app developed by Nature Scott to record and submit data, including geolocation and photographic evidence of their cull, as well as information on how carcasses were disposed of. This will help Nature Scott in its ongoing work to increase look at the time, 21 minutes, to increase capacity in local supply chains for venison and nutritious and sustainable food. So basically, proof it's went to the game dealer, proof that you've shot the deer, pictures. You will probably need to do a locational geological thing, what 3 words, basically all the stuff that I do on the estate anyway. The schemes will start in autumn 2024, so they're starting now, and run to March 2025 with expectation to repeat in winter 25, 26, 26, 27, after which their effectiveness will be reviewed and a report with recommendations and lessons learned produced. This will be used to develop any future incentive schemes. Right, so simple as this is that hinds and calves, so calves are anything under a year, will be, basically what's going to happen is that many of you guys out there will actually not want to be part of this incentive, even if you have got property in these areas, because one of the most controversial things in regards to contracting is that we take calves, we take hinds that are pregnant, we take various other things, and that is a big problem for a lot of people in the community, and rightfully so. It's a hard thing to deal with. There has also been a mental health kind of concern in regards to it for gamekeepers who are asked to shoot deer out a season and things like that. And we already know that many of the organisations, BASC, being one of them, Gamekeepers Trust, that sort of stuff, have already, and the Scottish Gamekeepers Association, God, I forget about Scottish Gamekeepers Association, they've already addressed this with the Nature Scotland and the Scottish Government. So this is going to incentivise the killing of hinds and calves, probably during periods where they're going to be at licensable activity. And that is not going to sit well with a lot of the deer management community, unfortunately. So, yeah, what do I think about it? I think it's going to have a few pitfalls. As I said, a couple of years' time, they'll work out what all those pitfalls are. Anybody in the community will probably already know what the pitfalls are going to be. First thing is my side of things. Individuals who do not submit their deer numbers or do not have to submit their deer numbers to Nature Scot every year. For instance, if you run a syndicate, like one of the syndicates I do in that area, those guys will have it in their head that they will get £70 back per deer, which is probably not going to be a case. It's because it's whoever submits the numbers each quarter or each year. It's going to be a difficult one for that side of things as well. I could see a lot of people not taking up the incentive because of taking photographs and having to do the whole app thing and stuff like that. And yeah, that's going to be a bit of an issue, I think. What else will I find an issue? There's going to be a lot of contractors out there who are going to take up a lot of this land. I could see it's going to be open to abuse. I do think it's going to be open to abuse in many ways. Many guys will take multiple photographs of deer in different locations of the same deer and stuff like that. And how can you tell? The simple as how can you tell? I think the only way this would work is if there was designated larders where the deer must go into and it be supervised by like Forestry and Land Scotland or Nature Scot or whatever. There should be a communal larder or something like that in those areas. So any deer over and above the normal cull would go straight into those larders. And then individual game dealers, whoever's got, will obviously pick up their own deer sort of thing. There's ways of overcoming that, but genuinely I think, I don't know how. In the comments, actually, do you know what? In the comments, tell me what you think the pitfalls are going to be. Tell me how you feel that this is going to go, because I've had a lot of questions on this, a lot of questions on it. Anyway, what other things? So in the comments below, tell me what you think about this, how you feel about this, whether it's a good idea, whether it's a bad idea. Give me your reasons, and we can go from there. Right, let's see what's going on in this Deer Management Incentive Scheme pilots page. Genuinely, it's just going through all the rest of the stuff. Detailed guidance and application for Central Scotland. Let's see that. Let's see if we got anything. Just having a quick, what is being paid for? To ensure that culling in additional levels currently recorded in the pilot scheme area, payment will only be available for the number of red roe deer culled above the minimum culling rate. We've went through that. This will be 4 female red or roe or calves per 100 hectare. Right, okay. On each participating property, for those managing deer on areas of land less than 100 hectares, payment will only be available for culls which are additional to the first 4 adult females or calves culled. Right, okay, that's actually a little bit more complicated, because what they're trying to do is bring the deer density of your property down to 4 hectares, 4 deer per hectare. 4 deer per 100 hectare. That's actually quite confusing, actually. I think what they're meaning is that you've got to shoot 4 deer extra per 100 hectare that you have on your property. Yeah, 4 deer, right. Once the culling thresholds, as described above, has been met, payment will be available for culling of female red roe deer over 1 year of age with a payment of £70 per animal. A payment of £35 will also be available for juvenile red roe, male or female, under 1 year age. So, right, okay, so it is specific to that. So it's mainly female and calves. You get an additional £35 if you shoot a calf. As I said, that's where the controversy comes in. I want to get this first paragraph right. To ensure that culling is additional to levels currently recorded in the pilot scheme area, payment will only be available for a number of red roe deer culled above the minimum culling rate. So whatever your minimum culling rate is, there is a tool that Nature's got to have that will put down what your minimum culling rate is for your property per 100 acres. This will be 4 female red or roe or calves per 100. So yeah, so if you've got to shoot a 4 female extra per 100 hectares, sorry. A total of £95,000 is available for 2024 female season. Once this maximum budget is neared, participants will be notified that further payments will not be made for any new claims beyond that point. Any claims leading up to this point will be dealt with on a first-come, first-served basis. Culls reported after the cut-off point may not be eligible for payment. Right. So if you've got a contractor that is hogging all the payment, that 95, or a couple of contractors that are hogging up the payment, that payment is going to disappear very, very quickly. This is still only going to be open to a small amount of deer management community. This pilot, we are talking that this is only going, I swear, for Central Belt and for the Highlands, this is only going to be down to around about 50 or 60 deer managers that will be claiming this whole £95,000. I can almost guarantee you this. Funding for this pilot is on form of grant. We are not entering into a contract for the provision of goods or services. However, it is not classed as out of scope for VAT. It is the participant's responsibility to determine whether VAT is payable on payments received, depending on individual circumstances. Right, so that's whether you're VAT registered or not. So that's the Central Belt incentive. Let's see what... I'm curious on what the guidance for application for South Loch Ness. Let's see what that one is. It's a little bit more intense. Again, much of the same information, but mostly this will be 5 female Sika or calves per 100 acres. So it's an extra 5 in total per your 100 acres normal cull, or what is determined as should be your minimum cull. So any 5 over per 100 hectares, not 100 acres, 100 hectares. So for instance, if you have 700 hectares, it'd be another, for this case, it'd be 70 deer that you would need to cull before you would be incentivized. Total net funding for this pilot was for growth. So all the rest is pretty much the same. The only thing is different is it's down to Sika and calves, and it's 5 that you need, not 4. How will culls be reported? Assessment of all applications forms will be undertaken to check each participant's eligibility. We went through all that. Nature Scott will establish the culling threshold. So they are going to basically decide when you apply, they're going to say, you've got 700 acres, you should be culling 40 deer on that, and we will give you incentive to cull an extra 4 per 100 hectares. That is pretty much it. Got to use a deer app. Culling of Sika stags and all other deer species will be reported via the deer app. This will replace the need for submit separate culls. So basically you're going to do everything through the deer app in future, especially through this. So all your culls, even the ones you're not getting paid for, will go through that. Carcass disposal is at the discretion of the participants. The route of disposal will be recorded via the Deer app as either sold and to whom, given away, possessed, or own consumption, or left in the field as unfit for human consumption. So basically, it's still saying that you can sell the deer to the game dealer. Yeah. So it's a bit of a strange one. Sika, mainly for South Loch Ness and Loch Ness area, and for the Central Belt Ward, it's going to be red and roe deer, mainly. This is completely targeted at hinds and calves to try and reduce numbers. This is not targeted at stags. But as we know, there's always less stags than what there is hinds anyway. So yeah, that's, I know I've spent around about 20 odd minutes on this, try to explain some of it. I'm going to have to get my head around it. Because as I said, I've got, I think we've got about 1,000 acres on the Loch Ness area. We've got 2 registered full controllers on it, and plus we've got the syndicate on it. So I don't know how that's going to work. I'll have to speak to people, speak to the powers that be, and find out how that's going to work for us. But I kind of got an idea. So if Nature Scott turn around and say that your land should be culling a minimum of, and I think this goes along with this deer management nature restoration orders that are coming in next year, or the consultation was this year, but I reckon it's going to get passed. I think that Nature Scott are going to come in and say, you're registering for this incentive scheme. We think you should be culling on your 700 hectares, we'll take that. You should be culling a minimum of 35 hinds this year, or 35 hinds and calves this year. Now, what Nature Scott then will say, we will want you to shoot an extra 4 deer per 100 hectares. So that's an extra 21 deer, if my calculation's right. They want you to, 21 females, they want you to shoot on your property. So it's not just an incentive to make you shoot more deer to what their determination of your minimum requirement is. It is also a way of them enforcing a minimum requirement number from you. Back in the day, you decided what your cull target was going to be, and you took a bit of advice depending on what your project was or whatever your land management strategy was. You took advice on that, and people would say, right, okay, you need to cull at least 20 stags and 30 hinds or whatever. Now they're basically saying, we want you to cull the minimum of amount, but then we want you to cull extra. And we'll give you an incentive to cull that extra over the minimum amount that we give you. So it's adding an extra pressure onto the landowner, but it's sneaking it in a way that is an incentive. Comments below. Tell me if I'm wrong. Hopefully I am wrong. Tell me if I am being, I don't know. It is an extension to the Deer Management Nature Restoration Order. This is a way of basically saying you need to cull this, and then anything you cull over this, we'll give you some money for. That's it. Food for thought. Anyway, this has been a long session. Thank you for listening to me rabble on about this. Hopefully that's cleared up a few things. It probably confused me even more, but I'll work it all out. Happy hunting. Stay safe. Catch you again next week.